Hello, people. We are back talking this time about preseason, and we were joined by Nick today, back on the
Hey
channel
guys.
again. We're very nice to have him here, along with the other two that we usually have as well, Chris and George. I mean, we've got half of George here. He's pretty much on his deathbed, but we move. We'll deal with it as it comes. And today we're going to talk about this preseason, and a lot of stuff happens. The signings coming in, people are leaving as well. I mean, we saw some funny lineups, especially against for Nuremberg, but we'll get into it. We'll get into some key performers. We'll get into some key uh, non-performers. Let's put it that way. And yeah, we'll talk about some tactics. Talk about some of the window as well. So that'll be at the end, but we'll get into it. So how are we feeling, boys? What are we feeling about this preseason? What about you? We'll start with George and we'll go around. How about that?
No, I'm feeling good. I mean, I'm feeling bad presently, but the preseason with Arsenal, I'm feeling good. So, um, I think it's one of the first times that I've seen us so aggressive in the market. Just generally, what I really like to see is um, how we've got our business. I haven't really seen it before. Last year when we had basically one signing, we've had four, and then as we've gone on, I'm not happy with everything in terms of an outgoing sense, but I love that we're getting people out. I kind of talked on the timeline about that Leno. I'm sure that's on everyone's mind. The actual value. I understand why we're in the position we are. A lot of the players that we want to get rid of, we're essentially between a rock and a hard place because they're demanding one place to go, and they're in the last year of contract. They are also players that the selling clubs know we want to get rid of. There's really no leverage. But at the same token, some of the fees aren't 100%. But generally, when I look at the squad, it's a team right now that I can see confident going into Crystal Palace in the first game of the season saying, look, it's not perfect, but at least I see the team quite complete. I don't think that I'm going in saying we're short. And I feel as though there was way too many people and, things that we need to sort last year that I couldn't say that confidently, at least for the first game, especially with COVID. And so um, that's a really big change. And then also I have to give props to Edu in terms of the amount of deals and stuff that he's been able to do. Regardless of what we may think on subjective profiles and where we want the team to go, there's clearly been a plan. They've executed it really authoritatively. And I'm a big fan of how we approach the market, where when we met our limit from a buy, we walked away. We didn't overpay. We paid to the amount that we're comfortable with. I was happy that we engaged in stuff very, very early on, and I just like the intent, and I think that's really, really good. I don't think we're done, and all the noises that we're not done, but generally, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing off the pitch in terms of what we're doing, and of course, some of the players. We'll talk about who's my favorite later, but generally, that's how I see things so far. Uh-oh, we've got a weirdo. So I'll throw that over to Nick.
Wait,
Nick,
no,
what do you
Carlos.
yeah,
Who's
me
going?
neither. Curry, are you back? No, you're not back, so you're gonna sort it. Nick, what's your intro kind of on the market so far? Like, are you with me in terms of intent, or are you kind of one of those people where it's like, I need the action? Like, it's not so much to say intent at this point, or do you think that you've seen enough to be happy with how the club's functioning off the pitch?
Yeah. Look, I'm happy. I'm happy honestly, because obviously, what happens, what happens to me and most other Arsenal fans that are so into it. It happens every year that all of the season we spend, sort of making plans for the upcoming transfer window, and we make these ideal lists, these best case scenario lists that everyone is going Pepe 30 million, Torreira 15 million, and it's never really going to happen that way. So for me, at least so far, we've done. Uh, I think we're on schedule pretty much. Last year we weren't. If you remember, last year we began the season uh, without a right back, without a number 10, without a new keeper. Those came in after the second game. Um, we obviously also had big injuries. Um, we had COVID. It was a much different time, and I think people always say that preseason doesn't matter, and maybe, you know, the results don't really matter. Like we're not going to beat Chelsea 4-0. We play them tomorrow. But at the same time, we look ready. Like last year, we didn't win a single preseason game. We were about 5 or 6 or 7 starters short in the first game. And this year, okay, we still want a winger. We still want a new 8 potentially. But we've brought in pretty much everything else we needed. Most of the squad is fit, and we're starting to see some real movement. Like this last week, you know, Torreira and Len are gone. Mari looks to be gone as well. Bellerin, we're gonna see some movement very soon with that, I think, and you know, it's going well. I don't really have any huge complaints. Obviously, as I said, we're on schedule, but we're not done. We still need to see at least one more signing for me. But yeah, I'm happy. I don't really have many negative things to say.
Yeah, no,
Am I
absolutely.
back now?
You're good. You're
Yeah.
back. Go
Oh,
over.
I don't know what happened there. That was weird. Okay, but yeah, I think we were at Chris, weren't we? I think we're gonna. Chris, what do you think, man? What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, well, on the window, I think we've done well. What, 5 signings? Well, Turner was done before, but 5 players have come in: Turner, Vieira, Marquinhos, Zinchenko, and Jesus. And obviously, what Jesus has played now 3-4 games in pre-season. Zinchenko, who came late, has played 2. Vieira's been getting back to fitness. Marquinhos has been in the squad as well. Turner's been in the squad. I think it's been good that compared to last season, and even the season before, which obviously because of COVID we didn't have a pre-season. It's the first pre-season where we have our new signings early. They've played some of them 4 games, some of them 2, and it's good that they're getting in with the squad. I think the intent has been beneficial because, like last season, our season didn't start till Norwich, which was at the end of August, and this time we don't really have an excuse, or we can't go back and say we didn't have this, this, and this, because everyone's fit, everyone's playing well with each other. So going into the season, I think most fans are pretty much confident. Obviously a bit scared because it's Palace, but confident. And pre-season has gone well. We haven't lost. Um, we've barely conceded apart from that Nuremberg game, and obviously the Brentford game where we played the B team per se. But yeah, I think pre-season has been good. We've seen some new things, and hopefully we get 1 or 2 more signings. But apart from that, I can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about the signings next, but before we do, I just want to make one quick point. I mean, we're going to Palace on Friday night. It's going to be an interesting game. I think a lot of doubts has been cast over that game because of last season and how they are a decent team. But I just want to remind people what we went into last season in comparison to what we're going into this season. If you remember last season, we went into last season with this. We went in with Balogun starting, Pepe on the right, Martinelli looking very chubby for some reason on the left.
It's not
it was. It's not his best photo, but it was Mari and White. Thank God Mari's going, lads, eh? But I just want to just a reminder. This season is not going to be like last season. It's going to be tough because obviously we need to get off to a good start because we've got a lot of good games coming up. But look, I just think that it was really a case where you just have to look at the positives in terms of what we've done this window, integrating Saliba playing so many games, integrating the likes of, as Chris mentioned, Jesus, Zinchenko, which we can talk about now because I think the first topic that we need to talk about is the signings and how they've bedded in. I mean, for me, before everyone else goes, I'll just quickly talk about it. I think the main thing is we've seen 2 things for me have been very, very key, and this will come in tactically as well. The first is Jesus drifting wide, allowing different players to rotate into striker as well. I think that's so key, especially on the left. We have this interchange between Jesus and Martinelli, and Martinelli gets into the box, and that's what you want him. You want Martinelli in the box. You want him close to goal. You want him basically in and around the box, so you can either find an assist, which he's been doing regularly, or you can be at the end of the goal or a tap in or something like this. I think that's such a vital key part. I think Zinchenko being able to form that three, which we'll talk about later, especially against Sevilla, it was very, very noticeable how good he was coming inside and adding in that midfield role. I think Turner obviously had a bit of a shaky start. I think he came off the plane and everyone kind of just turned their nose up and thought, "Oh, he's just crap, isn't he? He's just a bit crap." But as time's gone on, people even seen that his distribution isn't as bad as people assumed it was. I don't think it's top stellar, but it's not like bad. I wouldn't put it at De Gea level or something like this. Like he's got decent distribution. He doesn't love a launched ball though. I don't really see him playing a lot of around the back, tippy tappy around the back kind of football. I think he's much more launch balls. Yeah, and then we've got Vieira hasn't started yet. I mean, I think he's going to be integrated soon, and then I'm missing someone. Who am I missing? Obviously Saliba coming and playing so many games. I think it's been a very Marquinhos. Or thank you, Marquinhos. I was talking to George earlier, and we were saying he was telling me about how he noticed how he was more physically ready than he anticipated. Honestly, I would say this. I didn't really find anything like nothing jumped off the page. I don't know if it was because I wasn't watching him specifically. I was watching the team, but like I wasn't zoned in on him. But I trust you guys. I think that if you guys are telling me, oh, he looks physically ready, and if you've seen Xhaka's article, interview, sorry, not article, he doesn't write articles. If you see Xhaka's interview recently, he talked about how he expects Marquinhos to be this a signing that can come into the team and not just be loaned out straight away. So it'll be interesting to see. What do you guys think? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll jump quickly. So, because I said it, like Marquinhos, I'll start there. So the biggest thing is how he receives the ball. Like immediately, what you can see is he's opening himself up to basically receive and be progressive from the jump. I noticed that in the small cameos, but also in some of the old film that I had a look at. He's very good receiving the ball. He gives me a very similar gait kind of to Douglas Costa, if you guys remember. And he kind of has that receive and face very, very kind of progressive and open at the same time. But it's what Mikel preaches a lot when he receives the ball. And so I thought that was really important. And then beyond that, when you're looking at how physical he is, I don't mean physicality in the sense that he's a big player. He's somebody that can ride challenges and has really good low center of gravity. I find right now in the cameos that we've seen, you're just going to see that he is probably playing within himself. I see him kind of laying off a little bit more. He's not as direct as he normally is too. You can very much see he's nervous. He doesn't, he's not used to an adult atmosphere, at least in this team. But the one thing that we haven't seen that I've seen on film is how really direct he is as a burst. And also his ability in the left half space is also something that we haven't seen yet, but that he can do. He's not just an option on the right. He definitely can play that role on the left. But for me, he's chosen very smart options passing wise in preseason. Like I've never seen him play a pass that I see as though he's not ready to take on. If anything, he's been too safe, and I want him to be a little bit more adventurous. But for me, he's definitely able to contribute in lower league opposition, league cups, and also just to see what he's like in some early level games, maybe like Fulham, a Bournemouth, something small like that. Who I'd also attribute to probably Vieira, just to touch on. We haven't really seen him in preseason, but this is a guy that I know very well. It's a guy anybody who watches Bob knows. I've been screaming about him since last summer and before. I think we have a superstar. I can't say more positive things about him. I think he's going to be our signing of the summer in terms of what he does ceiling wise. I think there's a lot that we need to just temper expectations to in terms of his adaptability. I know a lot of people don't want to say this, but he's only ever really known Porto in the sense that he's only been from a small village down in Portugal, and he hasn't necessarily played high level from an experience standpoint. And that's really important because he's a local boy and really humble. And I think those take another kind of 6 to 8 months to adapt. But what's really great is this little Portuguese group that we've developed between him, Cedric, Martinelli, the Brazilians, Jesus, Gabriel. So I think there's a lot here for him to feel comfortable. But in terms of what he brings to the table, he brings a level of final third potency that we just don't have simply in the squad. Edu said it himself. Martin Odegaard's probably the only profile that's potentially similar, but I actually wouldn't like that comparison too much because I find that he actually is a little bit better at a lot of the things that make Martin weak, mainly a stronger weak foot, His ball striking, both sides, is excellent. He's got a great cross on him as well in terms of his vision. He's got excellent vision. No passing angle bias at all. He's somebody with a very quick 5-yard burst, get your bingo out. But in terms of what he's able to do, he has multiple midfield roles to his arsenal. You know, he can play deeper as a 6 with a deep lying playmaker. I wouldn't want him there, but he can do it. You know, he can play on the left. When he's on the left, he's a little bit more conservative, as you would expect from somebody of a strong foot. You know, he's not as potent as he is on the right. But when he is on that right, you know, you just can't not talk about his passing, his crossing ability, and his ball striking. It really is phenomenal. But added to that, his work rate off the ball, he's very pressy. He's got plenty of final third recovery metrics, and he's good in the challenge in the sense that he's very Cazorla-esque in how he attempts tackling. So he won't muscle you off the ball clearly with his diminutive structure, but, you know, he'll go in and he'll kind of get between you and the ball very quickly and nip the ball. That's kind of what he does best. And then when you start looking at what he can provide you on the pitch, we finally got an answer to kind of a Kevin De Bruyne, a Trent Alexander-Arnold in crossing delivery. You know, something that I think we have good in cutbacks, but I don't think we've had that half space cross, and something that we will have both sides on both feet. So very, very happy with Vieira. Quickly on Turner, I agree. I do not think that Turner is shown what he's capable of, you know, especially shot stopping wise. People will be worried, but that is one of his strengths. If you do watch him and you know him well, he is a very good shot stopper. One thing that you have seen, though, and I talked about on the timeline, is his quick release. I've said, you know, his distribution and his range can be something a little bit questionable, not necessarily in terms of how far he kicks, because he actually kicks quite far well. He's got good power to it. But the thing is, he doesn't have great clipped balls wide like a Ramsdale. He's going to have to work on his short to medium term range, but his release is very quick. So he will release quick, and we've already seen that. He's comfortable sliding it into, you know, a 6 that wants to receive on the half turn. But the biggest benefit with Matt Turner is he's a very brave keeper off his line. He's authoritative, and he's chatty. So he'll constantly be talking to his back line, very proactive for defenders. But he's a real proper student of the game. People will love him in the dressing room. And I just think that you can't not talk about his penalty ability. He's probably one of the best keepers in Europe right now in terms of his pure penalty shot stopping. It's excellent. He's got a phenomenal record from there. So while I think there's still a distribution gap in the profiles between a Ramsdale and between kind of a Turner, what you are getting is kind of a little bit more of an upgraded Leno in terms of profile and quality. I don't think he's got the same consistency that Leno has right now, but he definitely has it. So I'm happy with that signing. And then he goes to Zinchenko and Jesus. Really briefly, I think Nick likes those signings a little bit more, so I'll let him eulogize more about them. But the big thing with Zinchenko is I think it gives us a much needed technical leader. And the one thing that I wanted to go in this season with was replacing the experience that we lost. That was vital for me. And I think what you've got is basically somebody that is adaptable to so many different areas of the pitch, somebody that knows Mikel's system and can slot seamlessly in and offer us an option both in a sense when Kieran Tierney's not there, when Kieran Tierney is there, there's options even to play him. We kind of talked about that in this intro vid as well. Just a very useful multi-tool signing for £30 million. Don't think it gets much better than that in terms of prospects there. And Jesus, this is a guy that I think is going to really help us in away days as an outlet. Immediately becomes our best mover in the box, but also in terms of providing a consistent outlet. He's a guy that, for me, thrives in the wide spaces outside the box, constantly receives out to in, but in the box has one of the best movements that we're going to have in the squad. And so I think we've already seen his fluidity be kind of working a charm, but really what he adds is the pressing. And I think the pressing is going to be a major theme of this video, at least, because for me, that's the one thing that we've added. We've really added players that can hold on to the ball, keep it up, address that technical security, but also pressing-wise, we've really changed what we're capable of in that department. And we've seen some really good things there. So, yeah, happy with the signings.
Nick, I mean, I know you're more on the Jesus and Zinchenko side, so I know you're very high on those. So what do you make of how they've been integrated, and what do you make of the signings in general?
I mean, initially, to be fair, I wasn't super high on Jesus because I wanted, as you load, I think I wanted a bigger striker. I was really set on Victor Osimhen. But Jesus, it basically took him about 10 minutes to turn me. Like it was like he looks. I mean, I couldn't. There's nothing else he could have done in preseason to impress me more. Like he he plays with real personality, and he didn't really show that at City. He was a robot at City, pretty much, as most players that go there tend to become. To be fair, he obviously you would always see his great movement. He was fast. He was technical. He was a very good presser, of course, but you wouldn't see this extra quality that he has. You know, his flair. He likes to go wide, as Corin I think mentioned. He looks just fantastic, and he's offering everything we needed and more. Because he's obviously much better than Lacazette at even the things that Lacazette was supposed to be good at, which is the dropping deep. And to be fair to Lacazette, even though he really frustrated us, if you look at some of our highlights from last season, he was always involved in like our good passages of play. He was always there, really good at making those one touches, very Wenger esque passes. Jesus obviously playing being a former City player, he has that in his tools, but he can also drift wide. His movement on the box is phenomenal. Like these two goals that we saw in preseason, both from Martinelli half space crosses, is something that we really need in the squad. It's like, and obviously we have more players that can offer the delivery, as George said with Fabio, potentially Yuri Tielemans if we bring him in, Saka, Tierney, Zinchenko. We have a lot of those really good crossers right now, which is really exciting for me because I love crossing. It's essential in today's game. And Jesus is obviously a player that thrives on the end of those crosses, whether he drifts to the left half space to receive from the right, or usually from when the cross comes from the left, he usually attacks the middle. That's a thing I've noticed. He's been brilliant. Obviously, everyone has mentioned the Alexis Sanchez comparisons and vibes. Different players, but sort of the move, the role player at an elite side who comes at a slightly worse side and becomes the protagonist, the leader. And he's been unbelievable so far. And you can tell he's a player that's going to score many, many goals for us. Like I have zero doubt that he's going to score against Palace. I mean, that's probably going to come back to bite me in the ass, but he's gonna start well. Zinchenko hasn't played as much yet to show his quality, but the fact that he played pretty much 48 hours or even less after he was announced and he didn't put a foot wrong, it shows his quality. The fact that you can mock Arteta for going, as we mocked Ten Hag for going for his former players, you can mock Arteta for doing the same. But what's undoubtable with those players is that they adapt right away. They don't need adaptation time, especially when they come from the same league. And Zinchenko is looking very good as well. 30 million, as George said, is a phenomenal deal. You look at Lisandro Martinez going for double that. You look at Marco Corella going for pretty much double that, like 20 million more. You could argue that those guys are better, but they're not 20, 30 million better than Zinchenko. And Zinchenko, I think, out of all those guys, is the best fit for what we needed. As George said, he can be the extra midfielder, which I think we didn't really see in his debut, but we saw a lot against Sevilla, going in and making a double pivot along with Thomas. And he's also really good when we're in the final third and Xhaka drops deep because you want Martinelli in the box, and Zinchenko is able to replicate Tierney, not as dynamic with his 1v1 play, but certainly more secure in the ball. And he's still maybe we haven't really seen him cross as much, but I think we saw it at City more, and I think he's a really good crosser as well. It's evident from just from his switches of play; they're incredible. So you can see that he's going to be a good crosser as well. And he's a player that he's reliable. I think with Zinchenko, for me, there's always a conversation. A lot of when it comes to rating players in this platform. It always comes down, I think, to me, a lot of times it comes down to like talent versus application, right? And usually I'm for talent. I'm for the Nuno Tavares, who is extremely talented, but hasn't really has the application yet. He hasn't really shown that. And I usually am for these talented types over the not super talented, but very reliable guys like Zinchenko. But I think um, for once, like we need some type of reliable performer. I like Tavares, but probably when Tierney goes down in the end of the season, we're gonna need a reliable player. And Zinchenko is also good enough to be a starter over Tierney, which is great. Like nobody cares that Tierney's out for Palace. I mean, I don't know if he's out, but he's probably not ready to start, which is great. And nobody's mentioned it yet. Not technically new signing, but I want to start on him. Saliba looks like the truth. He looks phenomenal. Like I just didn't expect him to be this good right away. To be fair, I didn't really watch him that much in France, but he's rapid. He's absolutely rapid. Forms a great partnership with Gabriel. White looks good at right back, so we look good there. And Fabio, I think George said everything. Don't really have to say something about him. And I also want to agree on Turner. I think, in terms of distribution, it was supposed to be a weakness. He doesn't have the Ramsdale passes, but as George said, he's very comfortable in the ball, which is what completely pissed me off with Leno. And I hate Leno, even though he's a good guy, he's a good professional. I hate him because he never had the balls to make that simple pass to the number 6, which is always on. Well, not always, but when a lot of the time where you're getting pressed high, the pass to number 6 is on, but not all the keepers have the balls to make that pass. Leno didn't have them, and a few times he did it. If you remember a couple of seasons ago, it was like not too much in a row, but it was like 2 occasions in a very close time, which was the Xhaka mistake versus Burnley, where Leno passed him to him at the wrong position, and then a couple of weeks later, the goal we conceded against Olympiacos at their ground with Ceballos receiving from Leno and being robbed by El Arabi, and we conceded. And Leno made the wrong decision both times. Turner looks very composed, doesn't look scared, and it's like he just has the wrong rep for some reason. People don't really English people don't really like Americans playing football, and I think that's one of the reasons why no one why many people don't rate him, because have American ownership. They want to buy some Americans, obviously, and everyone just decided that he's bad, but I don't think he is. He's clearly not. I haven't seen too much of him, but at least with distribution, which was supposed to be the weak part of his game, it looks perfectly fine to me so far. So yeah, Marquinhos, I think George covered everything. I have pretty much no idea about the player other than the few things we saw from him in preseason. So yeah, from the signings, I'm very, very happy so far. I don't think in any position everyone was my number one target, but at the same time, I have zero complaints from them so far.
Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the signings are good. Like, obviously, George has been speaking about Vieira for a very long time. I've watched him since last year, since the Euros, or the under 21 Euros. I think he's a great signing. I think obviously in time he'll be a lot better than what he probably could be now. Um, him not playing in pre-season is a negative, but he's been injured. I wish he was fit for his sake. But I do think we'll see him a lot in Europa League and then see him more after the World Cup, just because everyone else, well, not everyone else, but a good 10 to 15 players in our team are going to the World Cup. And players like him, who won't have a chance or won't have a big chance early in the season, will definitely get their chance after November. So yeah, I think that's a great signing, and for the future, he could probably be a top 5, top 3 player in his position. So yeah, I think that's a great signing. Obviously, Jesus, he's probably been the star of pre-season. He scored in every game, showed great movement, great versatility, allowed for us to bring the left wing in the box a lot more. Like we've seen with Martinelli, Reece Nelson, whoever's there has been in the by the penalty spot a lot. So I think that's been good. And obviously Turner, that he conceded a goal which he probably should have saved in his first game, which is why I think a lot of people don't like him so far. But I like his urgency. Like whenever he gets the ball, he's so quick to play out. And obviously he doesn't have the range or the accuracy of Ramsdale, but I think he's a more composed shot stopper. And then with Zinchenko, I think he's just a better backup right now than Tavares. Tavares obviously was good. Then he got he lost confidence. So yeah, I think Zinchenko, good experience. He said it himself. He's a winner, 25, which is still crazy to me that 25-year-olds are some of the oldest in the team. But yeah, 25, he's an old head in the team with a lot of experience, national experience, league experience. So yeah, having three, 4-time Premier League winners doesn't hurt at all. And then with Marquinhos, obviously we haven't seen a lot of him, but I think physically he's looked good. I wish he came on versus Sevilla, but I think Arteta wanted to give the starters as much time possible. And then, yeah, I think hopefully we make one or two more signings. But I honestly can't complain with what we've done so far. 5 signings, and we haven't made one for 2, 3 weeks. So we made 5 signings in like the first month and a half of the window. And obviously, this relaxation period is not nice, but the season's coming anyway, so our focus will be taken on Palace. But yeah, I'm just really happy that we've been proactive, um, which is a big difference to. I don't remember any window where we've signed this many players or this many starters or important players early. We tend to do it so late when we've already had some trouble in the league. So it's good that we're now a bit more proactive than reactive.
On that note, I mean, just before we do move on. There was one point that I'm actually going to write about in the next couple of days. But this principle of the window has been to basically, for me anyway, I don't know about how you guys feel, and you can answer when we get to our next topic if you feel like it. But for me, this feels like much more of a floor raising window than an insane ceiling raiser. It feels like lineups like Brentford last year, the opening day, are not going to happen again. You're not going to see massive collapses due to drop in quality from the first team to the second or reserve team, because there is no reserve team anymore. There's one squad of players that are all looking to fight and compete for positions, and it's okay to not just have one player in each position. I know a lot of people are unfamiliar with that. There should be a starter and a backup, but in a competitive squad, you need players that are all hungry to get onto that pitch every game. And yeah, that's the main thing for me. And I think it's got to be discussed at some point. So, but yeah, in terms of what's happening on the pitch and what's happening in terms of tactics, I have noticed a lot of things personally in terms of how we've changed tactically. The double inverted fullbacks has been the mode of function as of late. Obviously, there's the 2-3-5 picture that we'll bring up in a second to talk about. But I don't want to do one person at a time. I think open up to a bit of an actual discussion about our tactics, because I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. What profiles, what roles are your midfielders playing? What roles are your fullbacks playing? How are we getting into the situations that we get into the final third? Our press. There's a lot of things to talk about. So I'll just open it up and we'll have a discussion. I think we'll start with the 2-3-5 that we debuted against Orlando, the double inverted fullback one. What did you guys make of how we look tactically? Guys.
Yeah, it didn't come up. I thought you were going to put it up. Anyways,
Oh,
no, I didn't. Now
there you
it's
go.
there. Yeah, when I first saw this picture, I was like, this is literally the perfect 2-3-5 for a top team. You have the 2v1 centre backs on the touch on the halfway line, essentially a 5v5 in the box. I think it's great that we're getting a lot more men in the box. We're a lot higher up. I think this game was great from the start. Then the intensity just killed off Sevilla from the start. I think the structure was great, and I think we're seeing great rotations. Obviously, a lot of people have complained about Xhaka being where he is in the box, but I do think it's not his best position, but it's an advantageous position because he helps in transition, especially when we're that high up. But I do think this is just great structure, honestly. And Saka, as you can see, has developed a trait to goes to the back post, and he's got him some goals in pre-season. So yeah, from this picture, I do think it's essentially the perfect structure you can get for a 2-3-5.
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, you kind of said most of it. This is our final third shape, pretty much regardless of whether we want to go two inverted fullback routes or if you wanted to change the two in that middle three to be midfielders. Generally, spacing wise, you will see this in the final third from us, unless we maybe are chasing a game and we'll show a picture to show what that little alteration will be. But here, what's really nice to see is that matchup between a 5 and 5 in the box and that middle three. Really, the debate is: do you have two fullbacks flanking Thomas Partey, or do you have two midfielders or one midfielder and one fullback? Regardless of what you choose, I think it places a little bit of a different demand on the rotation in that side. But functionally, you're basically covering the same space. And so that's why a lot of times I talk about zones over formations and why I'm a big believer in making sure that regardless of what you may feel that the positions on the pitch are, this is kind of what we end up in the final third 3/4 of the time. Sometimes actually, Pep, we've seen him end in a 3-2-5. We also seen it from Mikel, even in preseason. What is our build-up structure quite often, which really quickly is kind of flipping into something like this. You can end in the final third with this, but you're basically just dropping one person in the back, and you're adding one less in midfield. But really, I think this is what we will see in the final third quite often. I think when you've got inverted fullbacks, what the benefit is they're very springy to the wide spaces. We saw this kind of in our one man down against Liverpool, ironically, when we could add somebody to do that. But the benefit of having two inverted fullbacks there is basically you really cover the wide space very well because you've got two front footed players that are able to meet their marker very, very quick. The one thing that you do or you may lose is when those inverted fullbacks are faced 1v1 against more developed wingers. And so you got to make sure that you've basically placed a little bit more emphasis on the defensive 1v1s in that area. The only thing that could probably mitigate that is very diligent pressing from the back and also pressing from the front. And the reason I say that is because we've seen it already. The twin towers that we have at the back, in terms of that back three, and the pressing from the front has made us squeeze where the midfield, whether it's Xhaka or Partey, they've got less responsibility in making sure it's transition control. That's gone down to the pressing that we'll talk about. And what we've benefited is it allows them to dictate play a lot more. And we've relieved some of the responsibility on those two in the middle of the park in order to focus on what they're supposed to do, and that's progress up the pitch, get us from the middle of the park into the final third, and keep us there. But yeah, I'm really happy with the structure. I think it could be more clear, and it's kind of a dream look when you're really looking at what the plan is, and the disingenuous thing of the past of what's the plan. Well, the plan's really quite clear. And the only thing that I wanted to stress was that middle three doesn't have to be inverted fullbacks. Could be a midfield, and it could be a fullback that tucks in. We've seen that rotation very, very much. But it just places different emphasis on that inside channel. But ultimately, I'm really happy with what we're seeing as a structure. And then I'll probably pass it on to some of the other boys. Maybe Nick, you can talk about what you see 2-3-5 and 3-2-5.
Yeah. So for me, obviously, this is the sort of the shape that you want to go for in modern football for most of the time. It's either a 2-3 or a 3-2. But especially when you box teams like that in their own third, you're usually going to go to the 2-3-5. So you have an extra man in midfield. For me, like now that we're talking about the on the ball stuff, I just want to talk about. For me, like the build-up has been very similar. The one thing that we've really seen different in the preseason has been the rotations, and obviously, too many people have talked about how the positional play, the Pep, the Arteta philosophy it's very rigid, and the players have no freedom. They stay in a fixed spot, and I just want to say about that. We've seen that now with Arteta, now that he has a striker that has the ability to play anywhere in all of the 5 vertical zones in the final third. This is, we're seeing a different type of football right now. Maybe Arteta he's Pep is his mentor, but it looks like he wants to be much more flexible with rotations in the final third. We saw many times. A very an obvious rotation. We saw Martinelli swapping a lot with Jesus, which is awesome because, as Curran said, Martinelli is he's very good in the box, and Jesus is also good out wide. You see Saka swapping with Martinelli. You obviously have seen the Xhaka rotating with Zinchenko. We've seen a lot of stuff basically, and I think also when Tomiyasu comes back in, who is a lot more capable in the overlap than Ben White, we're also going to see some overlapping from the right side as well. But yeah, the rotations have been awesome. Like if you see our goals, our goals in the first half against Sevilla, none of them were in none of the goals our players were in the fixed positions. So like if you see Jesus' second goal, in his first goal, he started the play on the left touchline. In his second goal, he was the furthest player out on the right. In Saka's second goal, he shot from the left. You saw a lot of rotations, and that is very nice to see because we're being more flexible. It's much harder to defend because if there's no rotations and no players swapping positions, you're just eventually just going to end up passing in a U shape, in a donut shape, without rotations. You need to, especially against really compact teams. And we didn't face the greatest of defensive teams in preseason, but I think the first results are really positive. And yeah, I mean, and Saliba just gives an extra layer of comfort in transition. He's rapid, as I said earlier, and he's very important. It's very nice to see Ben White being very comfortable on the ball in that right back role. We can talk about the off the ball stuff later, but I still have some reservation about his defending wide right. But I think he's done very well on the ball, and everyone is looking comfortable. Everyone's looking comfortable, and that's great to see. You don't see players struggling. You don't see Xhaka having three players going 1v3. You don't see Tierney doing the same thing on the other side, which is like things that we saw very much in the first half of last season. So Arteta is adapting. The football doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to be one-dimensional. And aside from the results, it's been very, very fun to watch. Man City, based on what we've seen so far, Man City don't play Liverpool don't play better football than us. No team in the league plays better football than us, and obviously that can change with a couple of bad results. Players will go to their shells. But on the other hand, you look at you talk about Jesus and Zinchenko, guys with personality, guys that have been in winning teams, that don't give up once the team goes behind or once the team is struggling to score a goal. So yeah, I've been very, very encouraged with the fluidity our team has shown in the final third. Sometimes you just need better players. I think that's the point. That's like the main theme here. You can't do everything with Lacazette and with fucking I don't know, all of those guys, Pepe and Obama, and all of those guys we had.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, I know people are a bit apprehensive, but yes, 2-2-6 is a realistic option as well. The passing angles aren't as clean at times. It has to be done properly. But when you're chasing a game, and this all goes directly into what the next conversation we're going to have about the 3-1-6 and what we've seen in preseason in terms of really elevating the tempo and elevating your players up the pitch. So we have what's this shape here is a 3-1-6 with basically three basically defenders, and then your midfielder with your fullbacks and your wingers, and then your two strikers inside the box. And it's a very interesting system in terms of being able to chase the game because you can really turn the pressure on. And this is a system that Man City use a lot. This is a system where you can really elevate the tempo, elevate the pace. When you really want to push the tempo, push the game, this is what you would use. And we have used it at times. I know we've seen at times we've actually used a 3 at the back at times in this preseason as well. A lot of emphasis has been in terms of late game situations, which we struggled at last season. I know Arteta's been doing a lot of drills in terms of last 15 minutes, get a goal, find a way, make sure you get that goal. So what do you guys make of this shape in terms of going forward? Because we also have the 3-2-5 as well, which we mentioned before, which quite easily turned into this 3-1-6. So what do you guys make of that?
I think really quickly, and I'm going to make it short and sweet and give a chance for Chris to kind of get in here. But I've been talking about 2-2-6 for a while. And anybody that's on my timeline knows, I've kind of felt that's just the natural progression. And, adding another lane of attack is going to be the next progression for positional football. Whether we quite get to the 2-2-6 right now, that's going to be a comfortability thing. I do think that there's teething pains, and that's why you see this real 3-1-6 as an option. And so, really, what it is, especially with our makeup of a center backs, it makes sense to kind of at least initially start this way, have transition control more spread out in the back. It actually is a little bit more defensive than that 2-2-6. The 2-2-6 leaves you a little bit less, a little bit more progression, but a little bit less in terms of transition. It's a formation I love. It's really my big philosophy. But the big benefit here, we saw this versus Chelsea, is getting two players that are strikers close to each other and as close to goal as possible. So um, you're talking Martinelli, you're talking Eddie Nketiah, you're talking Gabriel Jesus, you're talking multiple players that have excellent box movement, but that have showed to combine very well with each other, develop chemistry. And the reason why this is so important, guys, is how many times did we come back from a game that we were losing to win? Very few. And so I saw that in this preseason there was a definite tactic, and we've had a five substitute kind of rule here. I see this being used late in games if we're chasing a game, or even in the last 25, 30 minutes of a game, we don't like the narrative and we want to change how things are going. I very much see this as a formation change that Arteta will look to use. I think it'll be fruitful. What I really like is I call it the double half space method with the six. And so, what I mean by that is by having an extra player that is a floater, you, yes, have somebody who attack the box, but you've always got two people in the half spaces as opposed to one, just naturally by adding somebody in that attack. And so what that does is it should create a numerical superiority if you're really breaking down a low block, which is what the benefit of adding this six is, why it forces the issue and it pushes teams back, is because you basically add somebody in that half space to add an extra body to combine with and hopefully break three. But the main principles are still there. You're still going to have at least somebody patrolling inside, and the back three are going to be to kind of support that six. You're going to see them step up very, very often. So whether that's Gabriel or Saliba, wherever the ball breaks in this scenario, you're going to see it break through. And you won't quite get the 2-2-6 this season, I believe. I think that's going to happen the following season. I think with Pep, you might see it a lot sooner. His teams are a little bit more advanced in terms of that. But that 2-2-6 is going to be a future evolution. Right now, we're just dealing with the 3-1-6, getting comfortable in that lane because, again, attacking with six is very different from five. Changes the spacing, changes the angles, but it's just something that I foresee Arteta using to kind of break down low blocks or to win from a losing position. Something we didn't do basically all of last season. Correct me if I'm wrong. I can't really remember one time that we really turned a narrative around like that, or certainly we didn't do it often enough if we did do it. So this is something that I definitely see us using quite a bit. But yeah, I'll hand it over to Chris to get his input.
Yeah, I think the 3-1-6 would generally only be, not only, but mainly be used when we're chasing a game. Obviously, the aim is to create, as you said, numerical superiorities across the pitch. I think at times you'll see like 2v1 versus the left back or 2v1 versus the right back or just more players in the box. At times we struggled to have men in the box last season. The only real time I can remember off the top of my head where we consistently had men in the box is when we lost 2-1 to Everton. And that's just because we went essentially all out attack in the end of the game. I do think this is beneficial because if we do switch to this, it'll probably be like 2-1 down or we're drawing and we need a big win with like 5 minutes left. And it just shows adaptability. We're aiming to create a lot of pressure from the front, win the ball back quickly and early. Like even from kickoff, we're very, very offensive and a lot of pressure. So I think with this system, we aim to win the ball back a lot, and adding players like Tierney, Saka, who have very good delivery, it will just give us a lot of options. And I think adding this, putting more people in the box, putting more people with different dangers, like just is a lot beneficial because we need to develop as many possible ways to score as we can. Obviously, set pieces was a positive point for us last season, but we need to score, I think, a lot more from crosses because obviously we did do well from cutbacks, but I can't remember a lot of crosses off the top of my head. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. But the main one I really remember was that Odegaard goal in the same Everton game with the late runs. So yeah, I do think this is needed. Obviously, it will put a lot of pressure on Partey or whoever's in the six to control transitions. They're going to be very vulnerable if passes aren't good in the final third or if we don't keep the ball well enough in the final third, which is the risk you run when you essentially go a 4-6 and you may leave yourself outmanned in transition, but it's essentially a high risk, high reward structure, and the aim is to score very late. And I do think it'll be like very helpful next season, especially in those games like versus Brighton or not Southampton, but Brighton, Palace, when we need a goal.
Yeah, and so I think that leads us really nicely into the press, where we talked about on the ball, kind of the different changes that you're going to see, and then I kind of wanted to talk about the press really, really quickly. And so generally, what we've seen, because that's been the star of preseason, I would argue, if we had to talk about key performers, we'll get into individuals later, but tactically, the best thing about this preseason has been Arsenal's press. So let's break it down as to why, and I'll get everyone's kind of thoughts as we go through each of these really quickly. So generally what you're seeing on the screen right now, red is us, the arse, and then blue is, let's not call it City because I don't like those memories. Let's just call it random opposition. But generally, what you're looking at here, and I'll walk it through for people, is this is a ball side kind of on the left for the blue who have received it from the goalkeeper. And so what are we doing? So we've got Gabriel Jesus or the striker who tends to harry, force them into a position, make that bending banana run that we've talked about here on Bop so often. But then that ball side winger is going to attempt to close down the ball very quickly, and we're essentially man-to-man in the middle. And the far side winger is going to constantly pressure the goalkeeper to ensure that they can't really get an out ball. And what Partey has to, or the deepest midfielder, it doesn't have to be Partey, but the deepest midfielder is going to have to watch for is that quick switch because the space will be on the opposite side or inside. And we'll kind of talk about where those out balls can be a little bit later. But broadly, this is kind of the structure that we've seen. And it kind of switches whether it's on the right or on the left, but we see the exact same patterns going. And I wanted to fire it off to Nick before we talk about out balls. But in terms of triggers and kind of where we go from here, how do you see this lopsided press working out for us kind of long term? And maybe any tweaks that you might add to kind of this overall pressing structure?
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, sorry. So,
no,
well, as George said, it was the press has been massive in preseason. We've seen how much it has improved and how we're really going to be a pressing team now instead of a mid-block team, which is exciting because it's probably going to mean that we're going to have more possession as well. That's basically why you're going to press. And yeah, obviously this has also been a result of the better players that we have right now for that, mainly the striker who has to lead the press. And yeah, we've seen many interesting triggers. We have been very aggressive. One thing that's not highlighted in this picture that we've seen is how aggressive the fullbacks are as well. Like you'll always see once the winger will push, like normally in this picture you would see the number 3, the left back. Sometimes the number 6 may not go all the way there, but you're going to see the left back go there, and you're going to see the left center back switch over to guard to mark the winger. Our fullback have been very aggressive, and to me that really shows how much they trust the center backs. With Saliba and with Gabriel, they're both very quick, very adept at defending the wide areas. So for me, this it's been personnel based mostly. When you have a striker that's going to consistently press, and you also have, obviously, as George has been really going on about it for a while with that 5 subs, how important that's going to be for scoring goals, but also for pressing. Mostly, you're going to be able to bring on a Fabio Vieira and an Nketiah, who are really good pressers to close out games. You're going to be able to bring on a Tomiyasu if you're struggling early on the on wide areas, and you want a more aggressive presser. There's a lot of interesting stuff to go in there. I've liked how our press has been a lot more adaptable. You've seen the number 10 drop a little bit deeper in that press, sort of transition to a 4-2-3-1 rather than just a straight 4-4-2, which really left a very big burden to the double pivot. We've seen the number 10 mostly shadow the number six, the opposing number 6, or the closest midfielder is there to receive, and it's been placing a bigger burden on our fullbacks who have been very well equipped to handle it. So yeah, I mean, there's not really much to complain here. The structure is really good. It can adapt. You know, we can talk about later how it can switch when we're facing maybe a 3-4-3. We've seen how well we press against Chelsea. It's going to get even better with Jesus. So yeah, I mean, it's exciting, and the personnel makes it. Like with press more than anything, the personnel makes the press. You can have a perfect structure, but if you get bypassed quickly because one player is not pressing hard enough, you're just going to be forced back all the time. That's happened a lot last season. And yeah, I mean, with Martinelli, with Jesus, with Odegaard, with our new center backs, we're going to be a really hard team to face. More so than anything, we're becoming a really complete team. We're not going to be a team that relies on build up and mid block like we were under Arteta so far. We're going to be a team that, with their pressing and their athleticism and their rotations and everything, we're going to be a team that can beat teams all in every single different way, sort of like a Liverpool, if you think about it, or a Man City as well, with Man City lacking really the transitional threat that a team like Liverpool shows. So yeah, it's. I think if you have to draw out a main positive for this preseason, maybe other than Jesus and Saliba, if you're looking at a team concept, the main highlight has been our press and how suffocating it is, especially in those first 20 minutes. It's very important to start off well, and I want to see us. We're not going to talk about Palace in this podcast, I think, but especially against Palace, just really quickly, I want to see us go after it very early, because a lot of the times in away games last season, we dropped back very deep, and we invited a lot of pressure. And I think I really want to see us set the tone in the first game on Friday by pressing very quickly from the opening minutes.
Yeah. Really quickly, I'll fire it off to Curran to give his thoughts overall. I mean, look, Mikel's talked. We all know the links with Pep Linders in terms of, you know, speaking of his admiration to have him, and people are asking, is this like the Liverpool press? Not quite. What the one thing that I will say is that, you know, they operate a little bit differently in midfield in terms of their press. But one thing that is similar is the way that they fill in for cover shadows. So just really quickly, what that is, you know, if you've got a winger to step up, kind of how Nick was talking, how the fullbacks will pressure very quickly to support cast. That's something that Liverpool do really well. When they do press as a pack, they press in making sure that every single spot is filled, regardless of who's on that side. And so while they press just a little bit differently, particularly in how they use midfield, we press a little bit more using kind of width, and we go a little bit more man-to-man inside. It's a little bit different at Liverpool. But generally, the fundamentals of backing up your press and your shadow cover is one thing that we absolutely have taken. And, you know, I'll give it over to Curran, mate, about your overall feelings on the press this preseason and kind of the general structure.
I mean, I want to get Chris after I finish, but the main thing for me on our press is, and we do have a couple more things to talk about, but on the press, I'll just really move on because there's the whole point of our press is to try and make the opposition bypass our press, either go long and basically fall into the traps that we've set, or basically just turn over the ball. That's the two main options that we tend to try and harry in off the ball. And if you look here, for example, a West Ham, for example, would try and, you know, launch the ball long and find I mean, we can. There's one far side and there's one ball side as well. So if I'll get this up, this is much more clearer. And you can see these blue squares where there's space available for the players to pass into. So, for example, say you have blue number 5 go to the far side, either try a switch to the far side to try and catch our centre backs or the fullback up high or the centre back out of position and try and run us on the counter, or just play through the lines and try and free up their 8 because they've beaten our press. The issues that we're seeing, these are the main issues we were seeing in time. But what we have now is we have a press that um, is so trusting of the centre backs, as you guys said, where we're okay giving these up because, for example, say you have Gabriel. Gabriel will check these runs. For example, that far side ball, you can check those runs quite. He'll check those runs. He'll stay with his defender. He'll make sure, not his defender, with his attacker, and make sure that they're properly guided and get the ball back or guide the ball out. And the same with Gabriel, with William Saliba or Ben White in that other position, in that other centre back position. The reason why we're so okay with leaving these gaps is because of how much faith that we have in our press, and I feel that that's so important because even this 4-1-4-1 structure, if you look, for example, the 9 is obviously the main presser, the first line of the press. Then you have that line of 4, and then you have the 6, and then you have another line of 4. It's so key that you have people that are willing to trust each other in that press, and that's why I feel like preseason is so important because Gabriel Jesus was so integral in leading the press, and the fact that he's had time with the team in preseason to adjust to that and get his motor on and get his specific role in this team nailed down. Same with Zinchenko and the rest of the players that come in. Saliba, obviously, his tracking back. If the ball is launched long, he's so good in those 1v1 situations. I mean, I know everyone's seen that Mbappe clip. So for me, the main thing is getting the signings in so we can implement this press into a structure that we can trust every man in this team to fulfill their role. I mean, what do you think, Chris? What do you make of our press?
Yeah, I do think, as everyone said, the press is probably the most impressive thing of preseason. I think the intensity is a bit different from last season, and as I keep saying, from the first whistle, we're doing very well to pressure the back line and the other team. I do think the press is a great one. I think it's a 4-1-4-1 or 4-2-4 press with either Erdegaard or Xhaka, depending on which side the ball is on, making the front four of the press. I do think it gives a lot of space for Partey to have to defend, or whoever the 6 is. They have a big zone that they have to mark, and I think so far they've done it well. Obviously, it does rely heavily on the fullbacks being very aggressive and close to meet their marker if the ball is switched or if the ball is played through the middle. I've rarely seen it bypass, but when it has been, it's usually been a ball over the top of Martinelli and Zinchenko not being quick enough to close down the marker. But that's really the only times I've seen it bypass, rarely, which was in the Sevilla game. But yeah, I do think it's a very great press. It combines man marking and zonal pressing at the same time with Partey mainly and the other side, right wing or left wing. So if the ball is with the left back, for example, like here, number 11, Martinelli, has to do a zonal and man mark press at the same time. Obviously, he uses his cover shadow very well, and it's something good that Gabriel Jesus does the same. And Saka, they've used their cover shadow very well to block passing lanes. And obviously, we've seen the press get goals. We got a goal directly from the press versus Sevilla and versus Chelsea. So it's been very good. It wasn't as good when the starters went on the pitch, but whoever's leading the line, Martinelli and Ketia or Jesus, they all do a great job at leading the press. But just when Martinelli wasn't a winger, it wasn't as good. But with the main team, this does very well. And obviously, Everton tried to bypass the press with balls over the top to it was DCL, right? Balls over the top to DCL, and it didn't work because the Twin Towers, Gabriel and Saliba, were just cleaning it up at the back with the 1v1 draws. And it's a good thing that Van Dijk and Konate is probably the only other pairing on the same level as matching strikers in behind. Because obviously with such a high line, the ball over the top will always be on. So you're going to need Gabriel and So, and even Ben White at right back they've been cleaning up the balls, man, very well. So yeah, and to answer the question below, I think a 9 out of 10 I'd probably give it 9 out of 10 just because we've seen it only for 3-4 games. So
Yeah.
9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think similar 9 out of 10. I want to give Nick his bite at the cherry in terms of how it might change. But one of the biggest things that I think to attribute the success of this press to is we've talked about the pressure from the front, but really the pressure from the back. That 1v1 aggression in wide spaces, having at least three of your back four that are not just good at it, but elite at that trait, being able to meet their markers. Sure, I think Ben White has some issues wide with some tricky wingers, but he has excellent athletic aggression, great horizontal agility to meet those wide markers. And so, really quickly, when you kind of look at that press overall, just in summary, the out ball, we talked about the West Hams of this world, the Evertons, the long ball far side, everybody that teaches a press. You look at your Chavis and all of these coaches' voice kind of videos, they always say, where's the space? It's typically on the far side. That's why we've actually recruited people at the back for switches to the opposite side. We employ this. But knowing the weakness is there, it's just excellent to see that we've got excellent 1v1 wide aggression, that we don't have to worry about that. And then finally, the ball side out ball. Really, we saw that against Wolves and Liverpool in particular when we got slaughtered. And we got to make sure that we're aggressive in the middle of the park, stopping that inside option because if you don't, you leave your opposition left wing in a 1v1 with your left center back. We saw that with, ironically, Jesus being spun. But also, you leave yourself kind of free to slip in behind that pressure. And Partey, as Chris mentioned, has a lot of space to cover. So if the 8 or whoever is that right central midfielder isn't able to successfully block off that passing lane into midfield, we are left in trouble. We are left backpedaling. And that is a weakness on the ball side. But in terms of the out ball, I think we've got excellent aggression in space. We finally have those things. So I'm very happy. 9 out of 10. I'll hand it over to Nick kind of for his last minute thought, I guess you were saying, on back freeze and how that might change. Sorry, mate, you're on
Nick,
mute.
Yeah, I just realized that's embarrassing. Yeah, so for me, yeah, again, the 9 out of 10 seems reasonable just because you haven't seen it on official games and on a large enough time scale. But yeah, I think it's been excellent so far. I'm extremely excited for it, as I said. And yeah, and I think we saw it, as George said, it was that Wolves game that we saw, it was against a back three, and we overcommitted a lot, and it led to some really dangerous situation out wide. Because you would, with the three center backs, you would see the ball side winger jump on the wide center back, and then the fullback would jump on the wing back, and then the winger in the 3-4-3, he would be isolated along with the center back. So this year I have no worries at all with Saliba on that right side. He's excellent on these situations where White sometimes struggles at that. And yeah, I mean, it looks really good. I'm cautiously optimistic. We obviously have to see it. Palace are going to go long. They're going to try to exploit the outball. Thankfully, at least he's not playing, but Zaha is going to have. He's going to get a lot of opportunities to go 1v1 up against White or Saliba. I'm confident in Saliba. White, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. He's going to have a lot of support from the ball side midfielder and also Saka tracking back to make that 2v1. So yeah, I just want to see us be consistent with it. That's all, because there are other times where we press really well for 40, 30, 35 minutes, and it just hasn't really stayed. But I think this year, with improved personnel, with the 5 subs, we have no excuse to not be pressing high for at least 70 to 75 minutes every game.
I mean, the other thing is like even last season going past, we were pressing for 45 for 60 minutes. I think at the best we were doing 65, maybe 65, 70 minutes at times. So I really feel like
He went mute, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully that we see an improvement. I would only give it an 8 because of the lack of time. I think that 10 is like the best thing ever. Like you can't leave your back line as out of 10. For me, I'm impressed. I just need to see more and more. But just to round off quickly and get I know everyone's feeling a bit tired now, but I want to hear from everyone about how one performer that I think was key in terms of this preseason, and one player that has to improve in terms of what's going forward this season. I'll go first because I asked the question. I'll go first. It doesn't really matter. I think in terms of key performer, I I would have. I mean, it's obvious to say Jesus, so I'm just gonna say Jesus. I know you guys are gonna produce some lovely little gems, but I'll go with Jesus. I think adding him to the press, having him come out wide as we mentioned before, having him make sure that he's um, combining with the players and feeling his chemistry in this side. The goals he scored, he's even produced that lovely assist against Sevilla to Saka as well. I know Martinelli missed it, but it was a lovely pass to Saka. I think he's really impressed when he's come in. In terms of player for improvement, it's hard because they've been very good. I can go back to Nuremberg, thank God. So Nuremberg, I think Ainsley, you just need to leave at this point, mate, because it's not looking good. Like I'm not trying to be rude here, but there's like he looked like he didn't care in that first half against um what was the first game, Orlando City, and when we played him first half, and he was like I said on the timeline, I'll say it again, he was borderline unprofessional. It was just so didn't care, didn't really want to show for the ball, just lazy passing, didn't really do anything. So he needs to shape up because there is a player there, but he just doesn't look like he cared. And we'll go Chris first, and then we'll go Chris, George, and then finish with Nick, and then I'll let George sign off, and we can get out of here. You're going, Chris.
Yeah, obviously Jesus was great. I think is it a player or just aspect? Oh, one key performer.
One key performer in preseason.
I think Saliba's been great. Obviously, I think that might be George's pick because obviously this guy used to be Saliba's season. But I think Saliba was great. 1v1 on the ball, he was great. He was very composed, especially in times where we were being pressed and flustered at times with Gabriel. But yeah, I think he was great. 1v1 in behind, like he didn't put a foot wrong in any game he played in. I also say Martinelli. I know it was just one, but I'll say Martinelli as well. I think the left wing has found a lot of space in the box, and it's been a new thing for obviously Smith Rowe was finding some space, but regardless of the left wing of the season, in the preseason they've been in the penalty spot a lot, finding space for shots, goals. Even Reece Nelson scored from there. So yeah, and one thing to improve on, I think. A clinical edge still, because I think versus Chelsea, for example, we could have won that like 8-0, 9-0, same as Sevilla, 8 or 9-0. Obviously, 4-0 is great and 6-0 is great, but it may come down to goal difference. You never know, and goal difference is a good thing to have, and goals breed confidence. So I think us being clinical needs to improve. Obviously, 4 goals is great, but yeah, we wasted a lot of chances in both games, and we may not generate the same amount of chances in the Prem. So yeah, I think improve on, be clinical, and I think obviously because he said Jesus, I'll probably say Martinelli and Saliba as the other key performers. There you can go, George.
I'll hand it over to Nick, and then I'll sign off. So, Nick, key performer or aspect, and then what you think we could improve or still need to improve.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a bit of a left field pick. It seems nobody has mentioned him really much, but he's a player that I normally criticize a lot. But I gotta say, I've been really impressed with Martin Odegaard this preseason. Hasn't done anything incredible, but he's been very solid, and he's been doing the things that he has to do to keep his place in this team, because this year he has competition as well, as we mentioned earlier. He's just been very, very good on the ball. I mean, the thing with Odegaard is that obviously, at least when the team is in possession, he's not going to do too much off the ball in terms of like making too many runs or being an incredible finisher or anything. But at least we need to see him every single game be very efficient on the ball and being incredible in the build-up and also creating chances. And he's been doing exactly that. Obviously, Palace is a massive test. I think if you have to pick out one player in the team that has a lot to prove at Selhurst Park, it's Odegaard, and he has a lot to prove there. But I think he's done all the right things in this preseason. He's been very, very awesome on the ball, like very exciting to watch. I think a lot people I think really went overboard with the praise last season. I don't think he had a great year overall, and I don't think he was as creative as people said. But he's been hasn't gotten too many assists this preseason. I think he only got one, but at the same time he had so many passes that led to he had so many hockey assists, as Americans like to say. You know, the pass to the assist. He also had an incredible an incredible through ball to get Saka in for his penalty against Sevilla. And obviously his intensity on the ball has been A+ as always. Just only thing, and also he's been overlapping as well, which we want to see. He's been giving more support to Saka. One thing that for me it still bugs me with him, he's just really bad at shooting, isn't he? And he's gonna have some great moments. He had that goal against Olympiacos in his own spell. He has some great ball striking moments, but there are so many times where he's gonna get it he's gonna be on the end of the receiving end of a cutback, and he's just gonna sky it, or he's gonna have a weak shot. And I want to see him be more clinical this season. And in terms of aspects to improve, I think there's one glaring. I talked earlier. This is going to be a complete team that's going to beat you in many different ways and is good in all phases. I think the one phase that we're still really struggling in, and granted, maybe due to game state, we just don't keep the ball enough. We don't. I understand that when you're winning 4-0 after the 20th minute, you're not going to be as hell bent on keeping the ball as possible. But if you look at the elite teams, especially when they're winning, they keep the ball more. And you first of all, by keeping the ball, you're not gonna let the opponent come back easily. Even though we're really good in our low block, it's just much more comforting it makes me much more comfortable to see us retain the ball rather than just sit back and invite pressure. We're really good at doing that, but at the same time, we have to be complete. We have to retain the ball. We didn't get any freak comebacks last season. We weren't on the receiving end of any freak comebacks, but there were some times that things got a little sketchy. Like the Leicester game could have been scary away if we had conceded before the 70th minute. The Spurs game, remember that save Ramsdale pulled off? I mean, that was a bit scary when we were 3-1 up. The Villa game, not so scary, but still they had a lot of chances in the second half when we were up 3-1. We have to keep the ball more, and whether Arteta wants to address that with an incoming midfielder, maybe Belgian, maybe plays for Leicester, maybe Curran doesn't like him that much. But yeah, we'll see. We really have to improve that, and I want to see, especially in the first month, we have a lot of easy games. I want to see us, if we're barring Fulham at home 3-0 at the half, let's just end the game with 65% possession. It will be nice for a change.
Yeah, something I always wonder is this a tactical instruction or even a preference of Mikel? I've always argued that his form.
Yeah, I always wonder that as well, if he prefers that. I have no idea really. We're gonna see, I guess, this season.
I have nothing to base it off of except for the fact that he is so adamant on defensive positioning, and I've always had this suspicion that it's a little bit less of a lack of quality and something he might demand a little bit more. He is somebody that does like that low block. He's liked it back three since he's first started, and he's comfortable in that. I don't think it's long-term something that we will do, but it's worth mentioning. It could be a coaching preference. But ultimately, I agree a lot with what the boys have said. Generally, for key performers, I think the big thing that I want to see us do is that build up what we've done in terms of technical security. It's been excellent. The Newcastles of this world won't happen again, I hope. And when we miss a starting player, we've secured that technical floor that we don't have to worry about our buildup anymore. And I think that's something that is going to be the star this season, something that we lacked last season that we will see. We've seen it in this preseason generally. In terms of some key players, we haven't really touched Eddie. I know it's annoying to say, but he's carried on from last season. He's really excelled. He's done excellent, and he's added this drop to the left half space ball carry. That's like a superpower of his now that he's been able to do. I want to shout out Sambi Lakunga. Not to say that I'm right, but that 8 switch, been saying it's been coming. I feel that's what he is. And I think he's benefited from that change being a little bit higher up the pitch. But look, I cannot be former Saliba season and not highlight William Saliba. I've tried to keep my pace this entire pod. This boy is special. I've said it. I haven't said it for hyperbole. I've said I think that he will redefine how we evaluate center backs. And I think the big thing that we've seen right now is what his athletic 1v1 aggression and the aura that he gives us off the ball. But one thing that we haven't seen quite yet is his ability in ball carrying and what he can do to step into midfield. That is something that's very special. We saw little bits of it as well. When Ben White, there was a period of play, I believe, in both the Chelsea and the Sevilla game, but he had 2 or 3 people surrounding him. And last season, when that ball is, against Tomiyasu or that ball is against Cedric, we lose it and we lose possession. I think we now have at least 3 to 4 players that are unbelievable on the ball that we can choose in the back, and that's going to be immense for us in terms of what we can do with build-up. In terms of what we can improve on, look, I think adding the experience that we did in Zinchenko and Jesus will stop this line from dropping the amount that we saw last year just in general. There were times, I think, Nick, you're looking at the possession. I think in general, our line dropped. And, whether that's us going into a block and whatnot, I think some of it has to do with confidence and the experience to actually be brave enough to do it. Granite's talked a little bit about that in terms of the aftermath of Newcastle, in terms of are we brave to a game plan? And I think the young squad has some of its faults in that young, youthful experience kind of way. And I think we've addressed it this season, but I want to see it more. I want to see us be more authoritative in keeping that line high, making sure we're brave enough to do those things. And lastly, input some tempo. I feel there were too many times we relied on Emile Smith-Rowe or Bukayo Saka to be our tempo changers. And for me, I want more people to step into that role, and that's going to help us adding possession. I just feel that we need to be a little bit better about gas pedaling on and off that possession. I feel at times we can let game state leave us by, whether that's us ahead, as Nick, you were referencing, and others were referencing, or whether that's just us not being vertical enough with our possession. I feel that we relied too much on individuals at times last season to do that for us, as opposed to as a team being a little bit more authoritative with the ball. So I hope that's something that we see in preseason. But look, guys, we've been here now almost an hour and 25 minutes approaching. And we just wanted to make sure that you guys like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you hit that bell for notifications to know when we do upload. Really quickly, I want to say thank you so much to Nick for being a guest appearance again. We love having you on, mate. Maybe you can shout out your socials as well.
Yeah, just follow me on Twitter, @NS Football. My ad's on the screen, and hopefully soon I'm gonna have some more video content. I've been looking to do some things on the tactic board. We'll see. I always have ideas in terms of media content that I want to do, and I never end up following through. But now that I'm gonna have a lot more free time, I'm gonna look to upload some YouTube or podcast content in the future,
which would be awesome. So, guys, make sure that you go give him a follow. Guys, thank you so much for the engagement. Look, we've got a busy week ahead of you guys. We're going to do some back-to-back pods. We got another video coming out tomorrow. So don't worry. We will get that sorted. Ahmed will look into that for you boys for sure. And then we've also got
set up, don't worry.
Palace preview. And we've got Crystal Palace, on Friday. So, look, guys, we've got tons of videos. Follow all the boys' socials down below. You know it. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's been unbelievable in terms of watch time. And, we love all of the support. Thank you so much, guys. We've got videos coming, so keep out for them. So, again, thank you for everything. And we'll see you guys very soon as tomorrow. So take care. God bless. And we'll catch you guys later. Peace.
Peace.